Alright, boys and girls, so what we have here is a solid transmission mount for a Volkswagen. And the reason you'd probably be going into this is either you've broken too many nose cone rubber front mounts, or you're going off-roading and you don't want the problem of ripping rubber motor mounts, or you're a complete drag racer and you want it mounted as solid as can be. So there's one more spot to eliminate wheel hop. This is one of the cheap kits that you can buy. They're pretty much all made in Taiwan/China. I think the only ones that are not are usually raised kits. I know like Ron Loomis makes them in America, but he usually makes a 1-inch raised. I'm not sure where Berg gets theirs from, so I can't comment on that. Most of the kits you buy, though, they'll have the front mount and the rear cradle. Usually they'll sell it just as that, or they'll sell it with the straps, and it's only $1 or $2 more, a couple bucks more when you get it with the straps. The only reason I get it with the straps is so that you get the hardware. Not that you need all the hardware in here, but the bolts and the nuts and the washers are going to cost you more if you source those than just buying up the straps. I've never used the straps because they never really fit, number one. They don't ever really fit over the transmission housing without a lot of modifications, and this one would require you to drill through the top of the frame horns, which you really can't get to in the car to be able to put this one on, and it doesn't really make much sense because the front of the mount is solid. If you were to be worried that you break the front mount on the nose cone, because that is a 2-bolt mount, what you could do is put a mid-mount on the car. I think that'd be a better option than these. But this is nice and thick steel to make brackets out of for something else. So like I say, the only reason I bought this kit with the straps is for the hardware, and now I got some scrap steel to make brackets out of. This is a pretty simple thing. IRS cars usually can keep the axles in the car and not have to remove them, and you can slide the transmission back to remove the front mount and replace it. That's usually what gives you the clearance problem, because it has studs on the chassis going through here, and it has studs coming from the transmission going through here. So usually you have to pull the transmission back pretty far to be able to replace the front mount. I don't think I want to get away with the swing axle here, because my car is swing axle, with keeping the transmission in. I'm probably going to have to take the axle actually loose and move it all back, which is not a big deal, as I have to replace my axle seals anyways. So we're going to get some tools and get started on replacing this. Alright, first thing you want to do anytime you're working on the car is to make sure you disconnect the battery. We've completely removed that, so no problems there. Next, under the back seat is the little access tunnel here in the main tunnel of the car. We're going to have to take loose our shift coupler first before we can do anything else. Also replace this, you're going to have to remove the engine from the car. There's no ways to get around that because of where the bolts are, and we'll show you that in a minute. And let's get started on this. So this car has a Phillips screw. Every car may have a little different screw by now because you know, people get in here. Also, if you're ever wondering, your VIN number is right in here. That looks nice and gooped up like somebody's done something there. Anyway, take our nice little screw out. I'm going to have to go get some cutters. This car has a urethane coupler on it. It's been working okay. They make solid bullet aluminum ones now, and the stock one is like a tube like this but with rubber inside. So, got to cut the safety wire off that, and then we'll get to taking that apart. Actually, it looks like it may be broke. It is broke, isn't it? So maybe we got lucky here enough to cut it, huh? That's out. Hey, look. A light bulb. You never know what you're going to find in your own car. Okay, so I think 5/16 wrench fits these, and I am right. Just gotta get this out. Don't try and make sure you don't drop it in there. So that's never any fun. And when you believe it, get it tall enough, we'll take it out and then we'll put it right there. Now, I'm going to go put the car in second gear, and look at that. It's off. So, let's go show you why the motor has to be removed in order to do this. So, don't mind my mess. I'm normal. Here's your transmission. Okay? Now the motor bolts up really close, and finally, right here, and your engine case drops down. That's your bolt. There's one on the other side. There's bolts in here. See those? 4 bolts. You're going to have to take those 4 bolts off and those 2 larger bolts to be able to move the transmission back and drop that mount down. So the motor is going to have to come out. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. No way else to do it. So anyways, next we're going to crawl under the car and we're going to start on all that fun stuff. So we're going to have to jack it up. Okay, welcome to under my car. First thing you're going to need to do is jack the car up, put it on some good quality jack stands. And what I'm going to do first is remove the bolts to my front transmission mount. Now, you're going to have a ground strap that goes from the chassis over to the transmission. Make sure you unhook that, but when you go to hook everything back up, hook the ground strap back up. I also have a mid-mount that has urethane stubbers, so I need to remove this so I can pull the transmission back. And then after that, we're going to come to the back and start taking transmission mounts off. I'll take the bolt out of the inside in here, in the bell housing, and the main cradle bolts, and that way I can pull this out as assembly. I'll probably still have to take one mount completely out. But the first thing we're going to do is start tracking on this. My transmission, the outside ones are 17s and the inner ones are 15s. So we'll get a wrench and we'll take those off. Alright, now it's time to take the 2 cradle bolts out. I have a jack underneath the transmission, as this will let it fall down if you get these all the way out. Plus you want to support it so you don't cross thread the bolts. And we're going to start getting these out of there. See you guys in a little bit. Alright, boys and girls, show you what I did here. So I used a ratchet strap going from one frame horn around the transmission, right about where the mid-mount would be, and back around to the other frame horn, sorry for the shakiness, to pull this back, use the jack to lift it up, and with a little bit of prying, I'm able to get this out of there. Now, an IRS car should move back pretty easy because the axles have slop. If you can't get it to move back enough, you're going to have to remove the 3 bolts that hold the axle tube to the spring plates and just slide the transmission back. So anyways, now that we got that out, we can slide in the brand new steel mid-mount. Put the mount up there. Alright. And now we can slide the transmission back into place and start putting that mount on. I said mid-mount earlier, this is just the solid steel solid mount. So let's get the release the pressure on the transmission and start sliding this back home. So we've got our front mount on, but we're not tightening it all the way down just yet. What we're going to do is we're going to take these 4 nuts off, and I already took the 2 bolts out of that side, and hopefully the cradle should just drop out of the way and install the rear mount so that we can pull everything forward and everything should align. So we're going to There we go, boys and girls. Solid transmission mount is installed. The only thing left to do is put the shifter, hook up the shifter again, and reinstall your motor. You get all the bolts tight. Make sure sometimes you're going to have to grind this lip down here, because sometimes they don't fit the transmissions. You got to remember the motor has to sit flush with this, so if this is sticking out into the area, mine's sticking out maybe a 1/16 of an inch, you're going to have to grind that down. That's another thing to look out for. But pretty simple install. If you already have the motor out, probably take you about an hour. If the motor's not out, 2 hours, depending on how hard your motor is to get out, if it has dual carbs or single carb. Pretty nice thing. Only thing is, it's going to make your car much more noisy and vibrate more. You're going to experience probably sometimes, depending on how rough everything is on your car, some things may loosen up. So if there's any bolts, like on your transmission or anything like that, or on your mounts, because I had to use my stock German ones on the frame horn, on the actual nose cone mount, you'll have to go in back every now and again and recheck those. Make sure they stay tight, because they will tend to loosen up. But anyways, boys and girls, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and get out there and get your projects done.